We continue our conversations with the 17 candidates running for Denver mayor with Jim Walsh. She is a history and political science professor at University of Colorado, Denver. Welcome to Next.
It's great to be here.
So your goal is to turn Denver into the most worker-friendly city in the country. What does that mean for the workers? What does that mean for the employers?
Well, what it means is that we won't have two Denvers. Right now we have two Denvers. We have those of us who can afford property, who have intergenerational wealth, and then we have folks who earn a wage and can't afford to buy property and are being driven out of the inner city core. So a city that's worker-friendly means that workers can afford to live in every neighborhood in the city. And there's economic diversity in our neighborhoods. That's something that benefits everyone, not just low-income neighbors.
What is within the power of the mayor of Denver to do to create that environment?
Well, not everything, but the mayor does have symbolic power. So the minimum wage can be increased to more of a living wage. The value of the minimum wage has dropped tremendously since the 70s, so it doesn't hold nearly the value. It's not close to a living wage. No one can make a living on $15 an hour, and so people have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs to do that. There's also universal basic income, which we discussed a little bit in the debate. And this is not a pie-in-the-sky idea. This is an idea whose time has come. It's also known as guaranteed income. And it means that the lowest income residents, people who are at or near the poverty line and below, would have access to more resources. And that would increase their the purchasing value. It would mean that we would spend less on health care, spend less on incarceration. The social benefits would be vast. And all the data from the programs that are being used experimentally speaks to the well-being of people. They don't have to, they can see their children. They can have leisure time. So this isn't just something that benefits low-income residents, it benefits all of us.
Is that something that you can do within the existing revenue structure of the city, or would you need a significant new source of revenue?
You know, I would need to look hard at those numbers. But I do think that there's lots of options for some of that revenue coming from the top of the economic ladder. So that could mean some of the corporate tax breaks that exist. It could mean small tax increases at the top. But again, the social benefits of a healthier community would vastly outweigh that.
Would you like to see Denver become like New York City in that it has a city-specific tax for high earners, if I'm not mistaken?
I absolutely think that should be in play for Denver, because every issue we talk about, Kyle, we debate, whether it's housing or homelessness or crime. If you break down those issues, they're all about the same thing, and that's that we have a disparity of wealth that's vast, and it's grown over the past generation. Whoever's mayor, if they have to address that immediately, or the city really is in a very volatile place.
You've said that you would like to allow more city employees, more employees generally, to collectively bargain and to strike if their demands are not met. Why should public sector employees be able to strike?
Well, there's a long, proud history of, this election falls on April 4th, the 55th anniversary of the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. He was in Memphis that day fighting for the rights of sanitation workers to strike. I think there's a powerful symbolism of that to me. It doesn't escape me as an historian that that's the day of this election. Public employees have the right to form unions, and all public employees should also have the right to strike. Taking away the right to strike for employees is removing really the only tool they have to get the attention to withhold labor. So I would absolutely support collective bargaining for all public employees. I would also support small ways to encourage workers to organize. European nations, many of them, Germany included, see organized workforce as a plus to society. It's not a detriment, so it's not something we should be afraid of.
How does it work when police officers can go on strike?
Well, there's a long historical debate about that, which I'm sure you know of. And because of the public safety issue, direct public safety issue there, that does factor in differently. But, our police officers have the strongest public employee unions in our city today. So they're very well represented.
You're a supporter of harm reduction to address substance misuse, and you support the idea of Denver creating a supervised injection site. What about things like a safer supply program like they have in Canada, which is really not even in the conversation here, but you've highlighted harm reduction as a centerpiece of your campaign. What do you think about that?
I think there needs to be a conversation about that. The shift we're seeing, Kyle, is from a criminalization, stigmatization of drug use to a humanizing, destigmatizing of drug use. And the emphasis being on keeping people alive and safe. And that's where our emphasis should be. So harm reduction works. The data is very clear in European nations and Canada. We're way behind in the United States, and we're way behind because we have a 40-year war on drugs that has failed. And so there's a great need to move beyond that.
It's interesting, you'll hear people kind of generally agree that the war on drugs has been a failure, and then you watch our state legislature increase penalties for, knowingly possessing fentanyl last year. Legislature also seems poised to increase the penalties this year for car theft. There's a lot of folks in town, though, that say, look, we've got a fentanyl epidemic, we've got a car theft epidemic. The way that you solve these things is you increase the criminal penalties. Yeah,
we can't declare war on every social ill. That's something we've learned historically. That's a trap we fall into over and over. And I see the fentanyl debate as falling into that same trap. I'm also cautious when we hear the crime wave. We're asked about this a lot in the campaign trail. There's a crime wave. There's a crime wave. Every social justice civil rights movement has been followed by a law and order backlash. And I believe we're living that backlash. And this idea of emphasizing crime is a little bit dangerous in the sense that what it usually means historically is the remilitarization of police and the targeting of low-income communities. So while I understand that car theft, and I had a catalytic converter taken recently, that's serious, it needs to be dealt with, especially if it's organized in a forceful way. I think we need to be cautious and know the moment we're living right now.
You're not disputing the crime stats in terms of murders tripling over 10 years, although they've slowed down in like the last 4 years or so. Car thefts are up. You're just talking about the response.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Another candidate for mayor, Kwame Spearman, has suggested that Denver should start collaborating with immigration agents again, which hasn't happened since 2017. It was a unanimous decision by City Council. What do you think of that idea?
I strongly disagree. I think that local law enforcement needs to stay out of the business of ICE and supporting ICE. I think that our immigrant neighbors and brothers and sisters deserve protections. I see this issue very, very clearly. If we're going to welcome people's labor, we need to welcome their full humanity. And so that means people feeling safe in their everyday lives. So I would strongly disagree with the notion of going backward.
And last question, our last minute here. You said that Denver should address the history of racial wealth disparities by having a committee that would consider returning land to the descendants of those who were wrongfully displaced. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about private property takings? How would that work?
So there's been some examples of this happening nationwide in small incremental ways when there's been a clear example of a family whose land has been taken wrongly. Municipalities can actually then reverse that and correct that. I think Denver should be a part of that movement. I think we have the racial wealth gap in the United States means that the average black household has 1/14 the wealth and assets of the average white household, 1/14. And that's a legacy of a long history of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining. So I believe Denver has an obligation to be a part of that movement in incremental ways. I'm not talking about massive ways, but incremental ways, symbolic ways.
And are you talking about public property that is then given to the descendants of the displaced, or the city taking private property and then giving it to descendants?
It depends on the cases. I mean, I wouldn't say one or the other right now. I think really it would just mean well-meaning people looking objectively at each case and making decisions, just as they've done in other places.
Jim Walsh, thank you for your time. Look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much, Kyle.